A lone rider saw a barefoot girl sway in the heat. He could ride past or give her the water that might save her. Heat trembled above the salt flat like glass on the edge of a forge. Noon light crushed every color to pale bone, even the sky. Wind carried nothing, not even the sound of its own passing. In that stillness, an 18-year-old girl moved. If the strained stagger of blistered feet could be called movement, she wore what had once been a cotton shift, now the hue of dried blood and road dust. The hem hung in tatters. Dried sweat glazed her dark skin, highlighting ribs too close to the surface. Each step left a faint trace of blood on the crusted ground, footprints already powdered by heat before the next one fell. Her eyes, half-lidded, held no horizon. She tilted forward, knees buckling, then righted by instinct too stubborn to die. Breath rasped, lips split. But still she placed one foot ahead of the other, a girl chasing the line where earth melted into sky. A shimmer on that line resolved into shape. Horse, rider, real or mirage, the desert loved to lie. The shape grew, dust plume trailing, details sharpening. A tall bay, sweat-matted. A man dressed in trail-worn canvas, wide hat shielding sharp eyes. Leather creaked as he slowed, reins loose. He dismounted 3 strides away, boots grinding salt crust. The horse blew once, head low. The rider, Evan Calloway, took in the girl, then the horizon, reading disaster's handwriting on both. He said nothing. Words were heavy and water scarce. He carried little of either. He uncorked his canteen, half full at best. Warm water sloshed, precious as silver. He stepped forward, knees settling in dust, so I met eye. His shadow fell across her, giving momentary mercy of shade. He held the metal throat, toward cracked lips. She watched the offered miracle as though it might vanish. Then trembled arms lifted. Fingertips brushed canteen. Her wrists bore rope rub. Her ankles deeper wounds. She drank once, small swallow, and gasped as throat awakened. He tipped again. She drank longer, hands shaking. Water trailed her chin, disappeared before hitting dust. Canteen returned to his belt lighter. He undid neckerchief, tore it into 2 strips, pressed one inside each sandal-shaped bloody footprint, makeshift wraps. She winced but let him wrap feet, breath ragged yet steadying. He did not ask her name. She had none left for strangers. He did not ask story. Desert sand carried enough sorrow. Instead, he motioned to his horse. She blinked, wavered. He rose, offered callous hand. After a heartbeat, she slid fingers into his palm. Rough on rough, and balance found them both. He boosted her onto saddle. She swayed, hands gripping horn. He mounted behind, arms a protective frame without claim. The bay turned west, hooves leaving prints that would crust by evening. Sun still blazed, but on the girl's face the tightness eased, a breath at the edge of hope. They rode toward a distant seam of darker earth. Promise of mesquite, maybe water. Behind them her footprints faded, but one drop of water clung to his torn neckerchief, glimmering like a vow. Heat surrendered shade an hour before sunset. Stubby mesquites clumped around a half-collapsed stage stop. Its adobe walls cracked like scorched bread. Evan pulled the bay to a walk and swung down. The girl, perched in the saddle, didn't move until he lifted her gently, boots grinding hot gravel. She leaned against a porch post bleached silver by years of sun. He eased the warped door open. Hinges sighed, giving stale heat and dust ghosts. Inside lay 2 bunks missing rope slats, 1 broken bench, a caved-in water barrel. Roof beams still held, enough. While the horse drank the last inch of his canteen, Evan scouted behind the station. A dry cistern yawned beside barrel cactus. He cleared debris, listened. Faint drip echoed. Using saddle rope and a tin mug, he hauled muddy mouthfuls, waiting for silt to settle before refilling the canteen. Not sweet, but life. The girl sat on a bunk edge, eyes tracking him like a half-tame fawn. He placed a strip of jerky on the crate that served his table, tore it in half, ate 1 piece, set the other closer. After a pause, she chewed tiny bites, throat working around salt. Light bled crimson through bullet holes. Dust danced in the beams. Evan unrolled his bedroll near the doorway, leaving the sturdier bunk for her. He removed boots, set them by her feet, gestured, boots for her bruised soles. She slid swollen feet inside. The leather swallowed them but offered relief. A breath hitched, almost a sigh. Night pressed fast. Coyotes tuned their lonesome choir. He built a palm-sized fire, feeding twigs one by one to spare fuel. Flame painted her skin copper and revealed a small whip scar beneath her collarbone. He looked away, anger like grit on teeth. He spoke first since offering water. "I'm Evan." She watched Flame, silent. He repeated slower. She breathed a sand-dry whisper. "Ruth." Name fragile but alive. He nodded as if she'd given map and compass. He laid his coat over a blanket, rolled toward door, rifle crossed chest. Moonlight cut roof cracks, silver lattice. Hours later, shuffling woke him. Ruth slipping past with the empty canteen. She stood at the doorway, desert wind tossing hair, gazing east. Sand hissed back. She returned, set the refilled canteen by his head, and sat on the porch until dawn bled over hills. At first light, he saddled the bay. Ruth tried walking, but knees buckled. He offered an arm. She took it without hesitating now. They hauled cleaner water from the cistern until the canteen sloshed full. She washed dust from her face. Her eyes shone. They left as sun-tipped ridge. He guided the horse. She walked a dozen paces before legs wobbled. He lifted her to the saddle again. A faint smile ghosted her mouth. The smallest sunrise. Kindness cost weight, not coin. His shoulders felt strangely light. By midday they reached an arroyo where cottonwoods whispered of groundwater. Shade pooled cool and green. Evan unsaddled the bay. Ruth traced an ant trail with her fingertip, humming a faint hymn. He caught one line, "Lead me to still waters," and felt the world tilt gentle. She unwrapped a thin brass ring hidden in her hair ribbon, pressed it into his palm. A child's thimble beaten into a circle, token of thanks. He slid it onto a cord beside a faded locket long empty. Wind shifted. Sun leaned west. He pointed to a distant blue smear, Mesa Springs. She nodded. For the first time, she spoke unprompted. "I can walk." Voice cracked but sure. Together, they stepped into the wash. Footprints pairing. Behind, the station melted into mirage. Ahead, a less cruel horizon glimmered. Coyotes sang again, this time sounding almost like applause to the rhythm of their joined stride. Shallow afternoon shadows merged under the arroyo wall as Ruth and Evan followed its curve west. The air tasted metallic. The sky ahead burned the color of forge coals, anvil clouds piling fast, flat on the bottom, boiling on top. Evan glanced back at the horizon's bruised mouth and quickened the bay's pace. Ruth walked beside the stirrup. Evan's boots empty and floppy on her feet, each step leaving a soft crescent in the dust. Wind rose. First a shrug, then a hard shove that rattled the cottonwood leaves like coins. Loose grit stung eyes. Evan scanned the banks. Nothing but sandstone shelves and scattered greasewood. He pointed to a slash higher upslope. Two boulders leaning like busted doors. Ruth nodded, fingers gripping the saddle string just as a gust nearly knocked her sideways. He swung down, lifted her once more, then led the horse at a trot toward those rocks. They reached the gap just as the sky tore open. Hail not much bigger than grains of corn rattled on stone, but the dust they stirred hid the world. Evan coaxed the bay inside, tied reins to a root, then crouched, pulling Ruth deeper under the leaning slab. Thunder punched the arroyo, rolling from ridge to ridge like wagon wheels over bridges. Rain followed, big, warm drops that turned dust to grease. Evan tore his bedroll cord, lashed one blanket against wind as a flap, then settled beside Ruth in a cramped wedge. They were close enough that shared shivers met midrib. She hugged her knees, bare arms goose-pricked. He shrugged off coat, draped it over her shoulders. When she started to protest, lightning lit her face, fear and stubborn gratitude mixing. She closed her mouth, pulled the coat tight. For a while the storm spoke in every tongue. Howl, hiss, hammer. Words would have drowned, but they found other languages. Ruth slipped her blistered foot from the boot, revealing angry swelling. Evan tore a clean hem from his shirt tail, folded it, and pressed salve from the saddle kit, rapping slow, so not to startle. She hissed once, then set her fingertips on his wrist in mute thanks. He felt pulse under her skin, quick but steady now. The downpour eased to a curtain. Drips pattered from boulder lip. One tiny rivulet trickled into the hollow, puddling at their knees. Evan placed his canteen under it, letting iron-rich water plink inside. They watched together, silent witnesses to the canteen's slow rise. When half full, he handed it over. Ruth drank, then did something new, wiped the mouthpiece with her sleeve, and handed it back, small smile flickering. Connection sparked, warm as lamplight. Rain tapered to mist. Outside, the arroyo floor steamed, sending curls of vapor like ghosts heading home. Evan peeked from shelter, western sky clearing, leftover sun bleeding bronze on wet stone. He led the horse out, mindful of slick footing. Ruth followed, coat still hugging shoulders, boots loose but welcome. The storm had scoured the air. Distant mesas sharpened blue, and miracle. Small pools dotted the basin, rainwater waiting in every depression. They knelt at the nearest hollow. Ruth cupped both hands, lifting cool water to brow, washing grit from lashes. She laughed, brief, raw, then covered her mouth like the sound embarrassed her. Evan felt it in his chest like a match catching. He splashed his own face, inhaled petrichor heavy as new bread. They camped on a rise above the cleaned arroyo, ground soft but not sinking. Evan gathered mesquite limbs a storm had snapped, damp outer bark peeled, dry heartwood burned. Ruth arranged stones into a tight hearth circle. Flames bloomed amber. Steam lifted from their clothes. Evan unwrapped hardtack, broke it, handed half. She produced something of her own, tiny square of jerky saved from earlier. They traded bites, salt sharing. Night spread starfields unstained by dust. Coyote voices answered one another along wet banks, but none near camp. Ruth set Dakota's makeshift tent wall, then eased onto blanket. Evan lay close enough that firelit warmth bridged the gap, yet left space for breath. Rain-washed silence settled. After a long stretch, she whispered, voice hoarse but sure, I was walking east, looking for freedom. Feet chose wrong side of sun. He listened, did not prod. She asked, barely above wind, why did you stop? He considered embers. My boy died 10 months back. Couldn't help him. Saw you, couldn't ride on. Words fell like fence posts, simple and permanent. She digested them, then offered, my mother sewed for riverboats. I carry her patience. He smiled at the hidden boast. Fire shrank. Evan added last limb. Ruth's eyes reflected flames. For first time they softened. She lifted brass ring thimble hanging on his locket cord, studied it under starlight, then let it fall back with small clink. Promised to revisit later. Sleep tugged. They lay side by side, shoulder to shoulder. Just before dreams claimed them, Evan whispered barely sound. We head north at dawn. Ranch country. Water, work, maybe rest. Ruth's answer came through half-sleep north, as if tasting the word. That was packed enough. Moon climbed, painting silver on wet boots and healed earth. Above, a shooting star cut heaven. Neither saw, eyes closed, breasts matched. Below, storm-fed pools cooled footprints already drying at their edge. Two sets moving forward, not alone. Dawn slipped rose gold over the mesas, turning storm puddles into scattered mirrors. Evan saddled the bay. Ruth fed the horse handfuls of mesquite pods, murmuring thanks in a language he didn't know. When they started north, the air felt lighter, cool by rain, heavy with cedar scent. Boot prints and barefoot prints mingled behind them, edges crisp before the rising sun could carve them away. By late afternoon, they crested a ridge and found Evan's destination, a small, half-abandoned spread called Dry Well. Fence posts leaned, but cottonwoods crowded an old spring box. Proof of water. The main house sagged, but still wore a roof. A tumbled windmill sprawled like broken sparrows across yellow grass. Evan tied the bay, surveyed damage. Belonged to friend. He's gone. Left deed in my coat. Ruth traced a finger over split porch rail, then nodded, as if claiming the ruin in silence. They worked until sunset. Evan righted the windmill tail. Ruth scavenged nails, tapping them straight on a stone. By dark, they had a door that closed and a pump that groaned but surrendered 4 cups of sweet water. Inside, she lit a stub of tallow he'd carried since his boy's funeral. Flame illuminated dust motes and empty walls. Ruth spread their single blanket near hearth. Evan cleared away cobwebs, voice gentle. "You take the bed." She shook her head, press-palmed his chest. No more sleeping apart. They lay on opposite edges of the blanket, but both within its thin warmth. Next days unfolded in patient rhythm. Evan patched the roof. Ruth stitched feed sacks into curtains. He found a buried stash of wheat seed. She dug neat furrows with splintered rail. He hammered the windmill blades back into balance. She climbed the tower, brave despite the height, and greased the shaft. When wind finally spun the wheel, pump clanked and a thin silver stream spilled. First running water the land had offered in 3 dry years. That night, they boiled beans in the newly filled kettle. Evan mended Ruth's torn shift with awkward stitches. She laughed softly at the crooked lines, then guided his hands. Under, over, pull, even rhythm. He smiled, the expression slow and unused. When embers dimmed, she rested her head against his shoulder. Neither spoke. No words needed. On the 5th morning, dust trails crawled over the southern plain. 3 riders, rifles slung. One waved a scrap of paper, runaway poster, offering coins for a one-colored girl, 18, last seen barefoot. Ruth's breath stuttered. Evan's jaw locked. He loaded the Winchester. Only 3 shells left. Ruth grasped his wrist, shook her head, then vanished into the barn. She returned with a rope snaffle and the baize saddle blanket. Within moments, she lashed blanket across a gate opening, creating a blind corner. Evan crouched behind, rifle ready. Riders pounded into yard, mouths full of threats. "Hand her over, drifter." Silence answered. They dismounted, spread out. Ruth stepped from barn, limping slightly, hands raised. As nearest man grabbed her arm, Evan's boot heel snapped board. The signal. She ducked. The blanket dropped. Evan fired. Shot ricocheted. Spooking horses. In chaos, Ruth swung the empty pump handle like a staff, cracking a rider's knee. Evan fired again, winging another's arm. Last bullet he saved. Held stare on final bounty hunter until the man threw his rifle down and staggered to his mount, cursing. When hoofbeats faded, Ruth trembled. Evan closed the Winchester. Empty, she touched muzzle, then his cheek. Thank you spoken in fingertips. He answered by untying the poster, tossing it into the cook fire. Paper flared. Words reduced to curling ash. Weeks slipped into early summer. Wheat sprouted, pale green. Ruth learned to whistle the coyote safe on call that Evan's son once loved. Each time she did, Evan's eyes warmed. She fashioned new sandals from the old saddlebag leather, yet still chose bare feet when soil felt cool. One cool night, they sat on porch steps watching heat lightning stitch distant hills. Ruth drew the brass ring from a ribbon, placed it on Evan's palm anew. He threaded it onto a rawhide lace beside his son's locket and lifted both over her head. The locket's empty frame found home above her heartbeat. Ring rested beside. "You carry my past. I carry your tomorrow," he said. Not rehearsed, but true. Her reply was to press her forehead to his, breaths mingling until thunder faded. Under silver harvest moon, wheat bowed heavy. They cut and bundled by lantern light. Ruth, feet heeled, moved sure between rows. Evan hitched the bay to a small thresher, salvaged from the shed. Gears oiled by hope more than grease. Grain poured into sacks. Enough to trade for winter stores. Maybe another horse. That night, coyotes chorused. Ruth answered with the safe hunt whistle. Evan added a low harmony. She laughed, the sound free of sand and fear. He offered hand. She took it. They danced slow circles in moonlit dust, her bare soles, his battered boots marking one path. At dawn, they walked the ridge together. From there, dry well looked less broken. Roof tight, windmill spinning, wheat stubble gleaming. Evan squeezed Ruth's fingers. "This land's got a new name," he said. "Miracle Draw." Ruth repeated the words, tasting them like cool water. They descended, leaving twin tracks, the big and the small, leading home. Above, The sky widened endlessly, but neither felt small beneath it. Where footprints went, the prairie would remember mercy. If Ruth and Evan's quiet road from thirst to harvest spoke to you, tap subscribe, drop a like, and tell in the comments which moment. The canteen offer, the storm shelter, or the moonlit threshing most planted hope in your heart.